So we're reading a college essay that was submitted by a student in the 2024-2025 application season. So what we'll do is Vivian will read through the draft. This is a rough draft, so we're not using the student's final essay, just because I think it's important for us to kind of get a sense of where the student can go from a rough draft and how they can progress. So we're going to look at it and then kind of break it down using our college essay review rubric. So as Vivian's reading it out loud, let's think about where it can go. How would you advise the student to tackle the revision process while thinking about, the ideas and content and the organization and the voice and style, all these different elements that we usually look at when we're doing our college essay reviews. I'm going to drop the link to the essay in the chat in case anyone's not there yet. And I will also put it on my screen to share. Okay, can everybody see it okay? Thumbs up if you can. Okay, awesome. Yeah, and then Vivian, if you don't mind just taking us through it. As Vivian's reading, you guys can also feel free to put some comments directly in the document, or if you want to just jot it down for your own notes, that's fine as well.
All right. When I was 8, my godfather Guga introduced me to soccer. His unexpected gesture not only sparked my love for the game, but also instilled a sense of gratitude that has deeply influenced my life. This introduction to soccer was a gift that brought immense joy and shaped my personal and academic pursuits. My love affair with soccer began during a memorable Christmas, just before the 2014 World Cup. That year, my Guga, who hails from Brazil, gave me my first soccer ball. I remember the look of anticipation in his eyes when he handed me the gift. It was more than just a ball. It was a gateway to a new world. Guga's passion for the sport was infectious. He amazed me with tales of legendary players and iconic matches, infecting me with a crippling illness within me that has forever urged me to always think about soccer. At first, playing soccer was simply about the joy of the game, kicking the ball around in the backyard, attempting to mimic the moves of my newfound heroes. Time would slip away unnoticed. Hours felt like minutes as I practiced dribbling, passing, and shooting. The sensation of the ball at my feet was both grounding and exhilarating. It was as if the world faded away, leaving only the sound of the ball connecting with my foot and the soft thud as it hit the back of the makeshift goal every time I stepped foot onto the field. As I grew older, my appreciation for soccer deepened. It became more than just a pastime, it was passion and pride. I started playing for my school team, where the structured environment of training sessions and matches honed my skills and taught me the value of teamwork and perseverance. Every practice was an opportunity to lose myself in the rhythm of the game, to push my limits, and to strive for improvement. Whenever I wanted to learn more, I turned to Guga. His knowledge of the game was vast, and his enthusiasm was boundless. We spent countless hours discussing strategies, analyzing games, and perfecting techniques. Guga's insight into the sport was profound, and he had an uncanny ability to explain complex concepts in a way that made them accessible and engaging. His guidance helped me understand that soccer is not just about physical prowess, but also about mental acuity, tactical awareness, and most importantly, how to perfect my inherited Brazilian flair. Soccer has taught me valuable life lessons. It has shown me the importance of dedication and hard work, the joy of friendship, and the thrill of pushing myself beyond my limits. It has provided a refuge from the pressures of everyday life, a place where I can lose myself in the moment and find clarity and focus. It was then that I realized the global appeal of soccer and the way it brings people together, transcending cultural and linguistic barriers. My godfather Guga's gift and his unwavering support have been instrumental in my journey. He opened my eyes to the beauty of soccer and instilled in me a passion that continues to grow. Every time I stepped onto the field, I carry with me the lessons he has taught me and the love for the game that he has nurtured. Guga's simple act of introducing me to soccer has had a profound impact, teaching me the value of gratitude and perseverance. This experience has motivated me to pursue my goals with dedication and to share my passions with others. The joy and appreciation I feel for Guga's gift continue to inspire me to make a positive difference in the lives of those around me.
Thanks so much, Vivian. So I'm curious, why don't we start with just kind of our bigger picture takeaways from this, first impressions. So, um, I guess my first question for you all is like, upon reading this, what do you learn about this student? What do you take away from this essay?
Oh, I'll go ahead. Um, I really love how passionate they are about soccer. They've clearly chosen a topic that has a lot of significance to their life. I also like how they kind of incorporate their godfather into their essay as well, have that kind of that deeply personal connection to the topic as well. Um, I guess that being said, it would be great to see some more like specific memories or scenes from their soccer experiences that speak to the life lessons that they mention, like importance of dedication, hard work, joy of friendship, pushing themselves beyond their limits. And then I guess wrapping up like how these lessons will carry forward into their college career more specifically. I guess that's kind of like my general gist that I got.
Absolutely. Did anyone else have a similar takeaway?
Yeah, I feel like when I was like I feel like I had the same exact thought. It was because I feel like this topic itself is a great way to weave in like a passion and pride for this writer's heritage and also like a family connection or I guess godfather connection and but it does feel I feel like sometimes I feel like a broken record saying this for call like as a like a reviewing essays, but just kind of like the show don't tell aspect I feel like is always relevant here. And I think there's a lot of great, like I think there's so many great paragraphs and lines that are a good reflection to have, but just missing kind of that some of those scenes or specifics, as you guys were saying.
I also really like how the student moves, I feel like pretty fluidly between this idea of like the gift of like the actual soccer ball, like this physical object gift, and then the gift of like the lessons and the admiration and the passion and like this kind of broader sort of cultural inheritance, but also like that deeply personal like connection that they have with their godfather. And so I feel like that would be like a great example, maybe being like this was like a really concrete thing that you made into this larger motif or theme, like are there other moments that you could kind of like ground in physical specificity or like kind of weave that like sensory detail in? Because I think it already has some like really compelling elements of that, of like grounding that perseverance or that like broader gift in something very physical. And this idea of like a memorable Christmas morning.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you all kind of echoed exactly what I was thinking. Like they are weaving quite a few different topics through this thread. So a sport that they love, their connection to their godfather, their cultural heritage, which is really nice that it can all tie together. But like what you all suggested, I think it could benefit from something a little more specific, a more detailed scene, a description, or grounding it with this physical, tangible object, which they do a little bit of that. But so I'm curious if you were writing this review for the student, um, what's one question you might ask? So a lot of times when we review, right, we're trying to kind of guide the student rather than tell them what to do. What's a question you might ask them in your review to kind of help them deepen these ideas?
Sorry, I didn't really answer your question there because I started typing before, but I put a
Nice.
comment there.
Yeah. I'm just I think like you guys all gave great commentary. So what I'm asking is how would you frame it to the student then?
Um, I might wonder, like, what is something central? Because there's obviously soccer and The Godfather and cultural heritage, and they have all these threads. But what is the central
kind of theme that brings it all together, I feel like that would be a good way to guide them towards grounding the essay and unifying everything by the end. And so I would question where that lies, whether it's a physical object or like an actual takeaway that they could bring into college, because it could work in a lot of different ways, but something more unifying.
One line that jumps out to me is, or I guess kind of this paragraph, at the bottom of the first page when it starts like soccer has taught me valuable life lessons. And then they go on to kind of like detail a little bit about that, but I think that that paragraph, there's a lot of kind of broad strokes of like the importance of dedication, friendship, hard work. And like Madison said, like I feel like like any one of those like life lessons, I feel like could be an essay in and of itself, which isn't necessarily to say that like you can't talk about more than one thing, but I think maybe I would leave some comments in this part of the essay, like asking like, was there a specific moment or like a setback or like a game, a conversation with your godfather, like something specific where you like you really learned one of those things in real time, and maybe like try and ground one of those or more than one of those life lessons, just because I think some of those things like the thrill of pushing yourself beyond your limits, it can be very true and real, but it can also kind of sound like a platitude sometimes, if you don't give it that specificity.
Yeah, I think that's Bonnie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just bouncing off on what Madison and Ellie said. I think maybe a specific question, just as a thought exercise, that would be interesting is asking them what would be the most significant soccer match in your life. So, for example, would it be the 2014 World Cup that they saw with their godfather, or maybe a school match that they won for the first time? Maybe that would help them understand what will be the most significance, whether they want to drive it more towards the connection with their godfather or towards soccer.
Yeah, 100%. And then finding that moment gives them the opportunity then to put all those like storytelling techniques in there and setting the scene and all these more creative writing elements that really draw the reader in. Yeah, I mean, I think I am totally on board with everything you all said, and that's echoes exactly what I would be thinking. Now, in terms of, so that's kind of the ideas and content now. And when we talk about next in our rubric, the organization, how do we feel, just general opinions on how the essay is organized? Is it structured in a way that makes sense? Is everything taking place in a way that progresses the theme? What do you all think about how it's organized? And your answer might just be like, yeah, I think the organization works.
I would agree with Georgette's comment in the chat that it's a little repetitive. I think that a lot of these paragraphs could either be combined or just say something slightly different. And it feels like it's going maybe in circles, even at the end. Like it's a lot of great content, but the organization isn't fully fleshed out yet.
I think for the most part, the organization's fine with me, but I would consider swapping the second paragraph with the first one because the second one begins more with the scene. Like the first paragraph gives me the sense of like a more traditional like academic essay where we have the introduction, the thesis is like, oh, this introduction to soccer, blah 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 blah, which like isn't a bad thing, but I would consider like switching it up to see what other effect it could bring to the essay.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the organization, like in terms of the concepts, makes sense, like starting when they were young and how it moved forward and they started playing soccer and etc. But like the description of each concept is a little like repetitive, like we've said, and maybe like I think the second, no, the paragraph that starts whenever I wanted to learn more, I turn to Guga. Like I feel like that paragraph is like the most repetitive kind of section a little bit. Like that stuff could have been either dispersed or just added more detail. So I don't think like the conceptual like idea of the story of his or their life makes sense, but maybe just the telling of it could be reworked, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's true. And we'll go into a little bit more. We'll talk about the essay length, but I think you guys are already identifying places where you could advise the student to cut parts that might sound a little too repetitive, and then we can replace that with a little more scene setting, or other grounding elements. I'm curious too now about the voice style and language. I think this is where this has become really important, especially with AI writing. So I guess my question for you all is, do you feel like you get a sense of the student's personality? Are there moments or glimpses of it in this essay, or are there places where you could see it being developed more?
I think in terms of voice and style, I think I really echo with Annabella's idea of the show and don't tell. I think there's a lot of potential here for having dialogues, imagery, anything that allows us to have or see the football, what it looked like, see how the Godfather looked like, see how the football matches, soccer matches looked like. So dialogues and imagery, I would maybe say, is something that could really elevate this essay.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like if you are like typing in like synonyms, like make this word a little bit like more intense or something like that. Like they did a lot of that and they kind of use the same descriptive words over and over. Like I think they use profound like a couple times, instrumental, and they just kind of seem like, and not in an awful way, but like your generic like big terms to make something seem a little bit heavier or like more impactful, which is fine. I feel like overall they're like a good writer in terms they understand how to like make impact, but they're just not fully there yet with bringing their voice in to actually do that properly, is how I would say it, I suppose.
Yeah, I would agree with everyone's comments about like the voice. I think there is more work to be done there. However, I will say stylistically, like reading this out loud, it was very smooth. I like the rhythm of the sentences. Like the only time I stumbled was like a personal mistake, and like other than that, it's really smooth.
Are there any spots in terms of like specific phrasing that maybe either you liked or made you pause or surprised you, or maybe you would ask the student to rephrase things a different way, or maybe you enjoyed the way they put something?
When I read it earlier before the meeting, the in the second paragraph, the crippling illness bit and kind of the tone going on in that was a lot. I was like, oh my goodness, that doesn't seem to match the tone. And even like I like the love affair with soccer, but if that's a theme you're gonna go with, I'd like to see that kind of not just thrown in as a phrase, but like, oh, I love soccer. This is my love affair. This draws me away from other things in my life. So that second paragraph caught my attention tone wise.
I know, I hope I wasn't trying to lead anyone. I definitely, that was the first phrasing that came to mind too, is the infecting me with a crippling illness. I found it a little bit tonally off from what they're trying to convey, because obviously that has a negative connotation. And I do think, you have to be extra careful with your wording, especially in a college essay, because you don't want to come across as, being insensitive to those who are actually affected with an illness of some kind. So you just have to be really really careful with your phrasing there. I mean, I get the idea of what they were trying to express was like, this is something that they can't help now, is there this obsession with soccer. But I think there is a more positive way to relay that. Did anybody else see anything, any phrasing that you enjoyed, or that you might advise the student to change the way they phrase something?
I think the phrase that stood out to me was, I think if you scroll down a little bit, I think they mentioned like perfecting their inherited a bit Brazilian flair. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, tell me more about it.
Yeah, was that towards the end? I think I remember that.
Yeah, hold on, you're right. Yeah, the second last paragraph on the first page, right there.
Oh yeah, my inherited Brazilian flair. Yeah, I thought that was a nice way to bring their culture into it too. Cool. Then, so if we're going through our rubric, thinking about grammar and usage, I feel like we usually don't harp on the grammar and usage too much. We're more looking at the big picture ideas of an essay. But if we do see repeated grammar mistakes, then we'll usually comment on that. How did you all feel about the grammar and usage? I don't think anything stood out to me. It seems pretty grammatically correct. Do we all feel the same way? Yeah. Did you see anything that gave you pause? I didn't notice anything, but maybe I missed something.
I guess kind of a lot of, I guess when we were talking about like tone, does the tone feel unique? I feel like sometimes there was a lot of, I mean, this isn't grammatically incorrect, but just like a lot of comma splices. And I feel like sometimes I was thinking like, oh, maybe the student could vary the sentence structure more. And sometimes when I see a lot of comma splices or kind of long, not run-on sentences, but like teetering on that, not that it's wrong per se, but sometimes I'm like, oh, this, I don't know, sometimes it does feel more like AI not that I think this student use AI, but I think that could kind of, it could be like a trait that sends that kind of pings off in maybe a college admissions officer's mind, like, oh, is this person like putting this through, like generating writing and just adding a lot of kind of flowery language just for the sake of it. So I feel like that's important to like vary sentence structure a bit, which I'm guilty of too. I definitely do a lot of comma splices.
Oh, same. Yeah. I think we're all guilty of it. But yeah, I think that's good advice too, is always to vary the sentence structure, make it a little more interesting for the reader as well. Okay, so finally we're at essay length. I actually did not do a word count for this essay, but I'm curious, just first impression, how the pacing felt. Do you feel like it was rushing through? Do you feel like it was maybe taking a little long to get to the ideas and themes that they wanted to convey?
I think a few people have mentioned this, but I think especially kind of in some of those middle paragraphs, it feels like it meanders a little bit, or like some of the things just feel like they're restated, especially about like, the importance of soccer in their life, how they practice, like the structure that it gave them, the passion. It feels like a lot of those sort of sentences are repeated, even if it's like there might be slight variations. I feel like sometimes the word choice feels pretty similar. And so I feel like there could be some comments urging the student to like fine tune and kind of hone in on like what's the most important takeaway, what's the most important descriptor, and to kind of like streamline some of that writing. And with that, I think feedback that I often find myself giving is like, and I am so guilty of this, is I like throw so many adjectives at a scene, especially when I'm trying to like get into like the sensory detail and ground the reader. And I think that adjectives are important, but I do think sometimes it's like we put too many. And so maybe like I think some people had pointed out like profound was used a lot. Maybe like command effing a few words and like seeing if they appear a bunch of times, and like maybe choose the one spot where it makes the most sense or like it really packs the most punch, and just making sure that like every adjective is like absolutely necessary, and not just there to make you sound, more descriptive.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely agree. And where you were saying too that you would advise them maybe to cut, like if we're thinking about advising the student where to cut and where to expand, we're thinking kind of that middle chunk of the essay really is where they could really kind of omit some sentences or adjectives here and there, and then maybe use that extra word count that they would now have to kind of set that scene or incorporate a little more creativity in the beginning. Did anyone else have a similar thought or something along those lines of where this essay they might advise the student to expand or cut?
I think, like I said in the chat, the conclusion felt like a little abrupt to me. Like, I don't think it really then gave like a takeaway on how this is going to push forward into the rest of their life or into college, or really what the overall, I guess, goal of it was. So maybe that would be another place to expand, if possible.
Definitely agree. Okay, so let's imagine, right? We did the review. We went through all the different elements of the rubric. So this is going to be a little tricky, but I'm going to ask each of you to come up with just one takeaway for the student. If you had to just narrow your advice down to one, I don't know, one piece of advice, one takeaway of where they should go in the revision process, what would you say to the student? I'll give you like a little time to think about it. I know we got a few really great suggestions, but if we just wanted to hone in on one. Anyone have one that they're ready to share? I know it's tough. If you have to have two, it's fine.
I think I would say like I really like the reflection throughout, and so pairing that reflection with concrete examples, like whenever they have a moment of reflection, just finding something that can also show that, but making it really concrete.
Yeah, I feel like mine echoes, but I was just gonna say like add more specific slash scene or scenes in the essay.
I really like those two pieces of feedback, and mine's sort of similar. If I think about kind of like the 1 to 3 adjectives that like after someone's read this essay, what's that impression or that profile that they're gonna have of you? And it seems like the student points out like gratitude and perseverance, especially in that last paragraph, as being super important. And so I'd maybe encourage them to be like, okay, what's a moment where you exemplified that? And like see whether it's like on the soccer field or maybe it's a moment where you're bridging that gap and being like, this is how I carry those lessons like into the classroom or into my personal life, and really try and like paint a picture of those qualities, which I think is really similar to like just finding those concrete examples or like focusing on a specific scene, but like maybe try and hone in on like what's that big like characteristic or takeaway that you want that college admissions person to be conjuring.
I think that's great. And I think it's interesting too that all three of you so far have had kind of the similarities among what you're saying. I think it all boils down to the same thing, right? Just kind of honing in on that one element that they want to convey through this essay, that one aspect of themselves. And then how do you convey that to an admissions officer? What are some scenes or moments in your life that really convey all of this? Does anyone have any final thoughts? Cool. Let me see in the chat. So Cindy, I think asking the student to identify the central theme or a single takeaway. Yes. So to unify all these threads that the student is weaving, the Godfather, the culture, the love of soccer, what that all has taught him. It's a lot to kind of juggle. So I can understand that it is tricky to hone in on one element of that. But I think you all did an amazing job with this quick kind of college essay review example. I'm hopeful that, other students can refer to this. We'll post this on YouTube or maybe some elements, some portions of it can go on social media, but I'm hopeful that people can refer to this and maybe it'll help students who are currently writing or revising their college essay. So appreciate the time you all put into this and all your fabulous input as always. So thank you so much. And that's about it.